Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, the award-winning cannabis news podcast brought to you by VoteProPot.com. Here are your hosts, Phil Adams, Jay Britton, and Andrew McCreadies.
Welcome, everybody, to another fun-filled episode of VoteProPot-Cast. And today we have a special guest. Our colleague Andrew is out this week, and filling in for Andrew is cannabis reform advocate, founder of Cannabis.net, and co-host of Weed Talk News on Pro Cannabis Media. Welcome, everybody, Curt Dalton. How you doing, Curt?
I'm doing great. I know when Seth Rogen, Tommy Chong, they're not available, you go with the next best option. That's me.
That's
You're third, baby. Third.
That's right. You're right behind Seth and Tommy.
Yep.
And Snoop.
Yeah, it's Snoop. Snoop was busy tonight too, but that's
Snoop
still fourth is not bad. You know,
fourth, not bad. You're in good company.
Take what you can get.
So, how happy are you with the results of the election? Putting aside the presidential nonsense for a while, but the sweep of cannabis reform ballot initiatives.
Well, I don't have a sister, Phil, but kissing your sister isn't that much fun. So I'm a fan of the small progress at the state level, but until we see something at that federal level, MORE Act, presidential, the Senate tie going to Harris on the vote, I'm not that excited.
Okay. Now, I'm a little concerned, and I wonder what your thoughts are that in the most recently released racial equity plan put out by the Biden transition team, there's no mention of cannabis reform in it anywhere. Does that give you pause at all?
No, I actually came up on the show earlier today, too, and I just think people are reading into it too much at this point. The fact that the Democrats are pushing the MORE vote in December for a tactical reason tells me it's front and center. And the fact it wasn't mentioned yet as a president-elect doesn't concern me because his VP is one of the major co-sponsors. So he'd be hard-pressed to backpedal on this one, I think.
Well, you may be right about that. I think that's right. So let's just for our viewers and listeners, we got a lot more listeners than viewers. I mean, a lot more.
That's going to change now that, you know.
But for those who are tuning in, listening, and otherwise partaking in Vote Pro Podcast, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Cannabis Advocacy, Cannabis.net, etc.
So, yeah, it was probably about 2015 that this URL, Cannabis.net, an exact match domain, came up at auction. And I was really shocked that at this point in time, someone would actually, put that up for sale with what I thought was going to happen in 2016. So I got the URL. I started to build it out. I knew that the guys over at Weed Maps had the other three exact match domains. So marijuana.com and net and cannabis.com they bought. Okay. So I knew, there was going to be advertising in this niche. So I tried to build out a platform for advocacy, but something that people could come back to, not just the standard publish an article and send it out there. So we have a full social network for people to interact, ask questions about growing, post pictures. We do a lot of content, both on the text and video side. We got our apps in early to Google and Apple, kind of got the grandfathered in there. We also created a CBD store with the hopes of moving to THC when the right time came and the right license. We have full mapping as well. So we give people, at least in North America, a chance to find all cannabis businesses around you, whether it be all the way from an MMJ doctor to a lawyer to an edible maker or just to someone who's an advocate could be on our map for free. And, you land in Chicago, you want to kind of see what the scene looks like. You can just pull it up on your phone.
Yeah. And I love that. I love the strains tab.
Yeah, so that was actually a user request. We had it on the website, a full strain guide, kind of seeing the future of this looks like the wine industry as far as typing in something. Right. Oh, what does Blue Dream do? Or what can I do for anxiety? Right. And I actually had a user say, why don't you add that to your app? Because it'd be really cool to pull it up in a store. And we actually did. So, we had a full strain guide as well. And
the cool thing is, for people checking it out, you go to that strain tab. Not only does it give you a list of how many strains do you have on there? My God, I
think like 130 right now.
Yeah. Wow. So you can pick a strain and then people rate it and they, they're right in there. Oh, this is great for sleep, or, this really helped with my anxiety, or this got me high as shit, or whatever, It is really interesting and helpful. It's great.
So it's kind of user generated in that sense?
Yeah, people can leave their reviews and their content as far as what they
yeah.
thought of it. And we do have the weed emojis, which are popular on shirts and stuff. We developed a whole line of basically weed cartoon figures to represent the anxiety or the non-sleep or the dry eyes. And we put them on T-shirts and keychains and stuff. So it's kind of a side gig, ancillary. We like to call it ancillary, Phil.
Well, it's obvious a lot of thought and a lot of energy went into that site and developing, because in my mind, and doing the show, we spend a lot of time on cannabis websites, researching, finding
it's
articles.
One of the best, if not the best one out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's and the writers you have, I don't know where you find these, but there's some really great articles. It's not just dry, statistical stuff. There's, a lot of commentary and editorialization stuff, and it's really great site. I recommend it highly.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we try to keep it. I once described it, I think, on as kind of a National Lampoon meets Barstool Sports meets weekly or recaps, because you don't just want to repurpose everything. So we try to get the opinion pieces. We try to get something that's interesting, whether it's an interview or somebody putting something out there and having a discussion. We can get away with some stuff that maybe some other sites can't, as far as, with making someone laugh or going a little over the line. So we enjoy it.
I like that about it. There's some comedy in there. There's some lighthearted stuff, which is why it's my favorite site to go to.
Yeah, me too. It's not just like Jay said, not just the dry, just the facts, man.
Yeah, facts, just the facts. Well, getting back to Phil's question, let me ask you, with the how the Democrats have really narrowed their lead in the House, and who knows what's going to happen in the Senate, but it looks likely that the Republicans will hold on. Is anything really going to change in the next couple of years?
Oh, I see. I am the outlier on this. I think it's going to happen fast as lightning. I am not the guy who thinks Biden's history and Kamala's history are going to, they're really not into it. It's all about money. You guys know that in DC. It's all about tax revenue. We happen to be coming out of a massive COVID recession. Everybody's broke. The unemployment coffers are broke. So I'm on the other end of this spectrum. I think this move by the Democrats in December to get this vote in, for maybe what reasons we don't all understand. But then with the transition, I think this is the opposite. This is going to happen extremely quickly. If the Senate ties and Harris is the deciding vote, or let's just shoot for the home run where the Senate goes Democratic, I think it's done in the first 120 days. It's going to happen fast.
So if the Senate doesn't go Democratic, if the GOP holds on, and
what's Mitch going to do?
Pretty close, but it's looking like a very distinct possibility. Still fast, you think? You think they're going to find a way to ram it through the Grim Reaper, Mitch McConnell?
So this is why I think they're doing it in December, to put the Republicans on notice, and the Republicans in legalized states that are collecting tax revenue and have this new Gallup poll at 70%, 68%. I think they're putting it on notice to the voters, and they're calling the Republican bluff in the sense, are they really going to veto this one? They have healthcare to worry about. They have higher tax rates coming. They have this redistricting and U.S. Senate stuff. Census stuff to worry about. Are the Republicans really going to stop this one? Are you really going to fire a shot and use some of your ammo? And that might be why the Democrats are getting the December vote in and trying to get this through. And there's a lot of great stuff in the MORE Act, too, about doctors being able to prescribe it to veterans without the veterans losing their benefits finally. So it's not just about removing it from the Controlled Substance Act. There's a lot of things in there, expungement, some social equity, some economic empowerment factors. It's not just let's make weed legal and walk away.
Right.
Yeah, I was real surprised to see that they're voting on that in December. I just saw it and I thought, wow, that seems.
Well, walk through it, Jay, right? What's the reasoning for the Democrats to do that? Lame duck Congress, 3 weeks before a new president is most likely, sworn in. Right. There's got to be a method to that madness. This isn't just, we got nothing to do on Christmas Day, that kind of thing.
Right.
Oh, no, this is all very calculated. And I think you may be right. If this puts the GOP Senate on the defensive, like you say, 68-70% of Republican voters favor legalization on a federal level. So, if this puts them on notice, maybe the passage won't occur in December, but, next year could be a much different story.
Yeah, the new Gallup poll just came out, and they're 68.5% now for adult use.
And you're looking at what now, 38 or 39 states collecting tax revenue, at least from a medical program. There's a lot of Republicans that represent those states too, and they need money and jobs. They might have to hold their nose and vote for it or not veto it. But you're going to come into office and not create jobs and tax revenue, the voters want it. Come on,
and the voters want it. More to the point, and also it's the expungement part of this that is really near and dear to my heart, and that's why I think they were hoping to see more of this in the racial equity plan, because this is such a racial equity issue, as we know, that these people are getting put away for long jail terms. Jay, you had a story about someone in Alabama.
I do. I have a story I read today, and this is will make you. I've been doing these last couple of weeks, stories that piss you off. Here's one for you. This is a veteran named Sean Worsley. If you're familiar with him or not, you probably read it. So this guy was just released from jail. He spent almost 10 months in jail. He was sentenced to 5 years. And here's his story. He had a medical card in Arizona being treated for PTSD. And he also had a severe brain injury. And I think he was in Afghanistan, if I remember correctly. So the guy's driving. He went to Arizona to visit family or something. They stopped at a gas station. And he's a black gentleman, and this white Alabama cop, this is where he was in Alabama, pulled him over, said his music was too loud in his car, got him out of the car, thought he might smell a trace of cannabis, so he searched the car, and they found a little bit of weed. The guys, and Sean, who was being arrested with his wife, by the way, said, "Listen, I officer, I have a card." He said, "Well, that doesn't do you any good here in Alabama." He could have given him, he could have charged him with a misdemeanor and whatever.
But no.
They hit him with the books, man. And this guy got a 5-year sentence. Luckily, he's out now. But it gets back to what Curt was saying about the MORE Act having stuff in there for veterans. I mean, that's such a huge part of this, and the expungement thing. So long story short, people heard about it. The press got hold of it. And, he was eventually pardoned and let go. But the guy spent almost a year in prison for having a little bit of weed, which was legal in his home state. So I just think this hits home the whole, and I got to say right here, lastprisonerproject.org. Check it out. That's the place to go, because they're doing great.
We did a big story on Sean, and even the bust itself was a little shady. He was playing air guitar, listening to music. Now, he has a head injury. He may not be what he was before, and he was going to help his grandmother move. His grandmother moved. That's going to move furniture. He drove across, the states to get there. No business whatsoever. And this is why it needs to change.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And do you know anything about the Safe Harbor Act? I think that was introduced, I think it was February 2019.
Is that for the banking? Is that Steve's?
No, this is a veterans Safe Harbor Act. And it has to do, it's a bill essentially that secures veterans the right to possess and transport cannabis for medical reasons if they have a card in their state. And we don't even need that. If we can get, the MORE Act passing and move along with those other bigger issues, that doesn't matter. But again, that just sat and languished in the Senate. In fact, it never made it out of committee as far as I know. But anyway, I didn't. That's, again, the veterans is a huge part of this whole thing, don't you think, Curt?
It is. And you've seen the specials on different, HBOs and shows where they show you the amount of drugs the government will give veterans for part of their benefits for PTSD. I mean, it's literally the size of a suitcase they get every month of pills. And these guys just want to use cannabis, that helps their anxiety.
Well, because it works.
And you just wonder why, this is okay to take this suitcase full of pills that will send you every month the rest of your life, but don't touch the plant. It makes no sense. It's time for a change.
Yeah, we're preaching to the choir. We all agree. And I think most people agree. I mean, let's face it. At this point, 70% of Americans agree, and almost 100% on the medical issue, right? So I think it comes down to in this case, with Curt saying that this is going to happen quickly, if there's anything that's going to push this, it's the economics. The situation that states like Texas and others. I mean, Texas introduced 9 bills this week, for different types of legalization bills. Right. And it's all going back to the fact that COVID has shut the state down and they're out of money. and they're look at these states making literally $1 billion. Tax revenues are through the roof in legal states. So do you think that's going to be a big part of what keeps the ball rolling and makes it happen quickly?
I was going to say, you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, would it be interesting to look back in 36 months and say, cannabis is legalized, it's removed. Did COVID spur that by a few years? Did the COVID crisis, due to economics, regardless how the three of us feel about the plan and what should be done, did the economics alone force the hand of legalization? And we'll look back maybe a generation from now or 10 years and say, boy, if that COVID thing didn't hit, would Trump still be in office? My argument is Trump's in office without COVID. I mean, the stock market's at 30,000, unemployment was 2.5%. Assuming that didn't change, I don't think Joe Biden's our president. So
I think Trump wins in a walk. So if it has that effect on the national politics, then surely we could possibly tie that to cannabis legalization in such time as it eventually does occur, that it moved up the calendar.
Yeah, it got the president who didn't like cannabis out due to the economic implications and how he handled it. And it moved up cannabis because of the strong growth during the crisis, the job creation, and we need tax revenue. So we may look back in, 3 years and 10 years and say, wow, COVID really helped cannabis legalization in multiple ways.
Well, the question that comes to my mind, though, is let's presume the Republicans hold the Senate, which is, I think, better than 50% right now, possibility. What's Mitch going to do?
Great question. Mitch, the hemp farmer, who's got we actually just put up why is Kentucky cannabis so good this week on our website from a Kentucky farmer wrote it.
Yes, I read that. That's a great article.
But does Mitch, can you ignore it's all about money, right? So we're a very slanted podcast. We're VoteProPot up cannabis.net. But in the end, how many Kentucky people get jobs? How do we refill the state coffers? And, the fact his state has some of the best cannabis in America historically, as Bill Murray and Caddyshack will point out. Does Mitch, but again, does he fire his ammo on this?
So they got that going for him, which is nice.
Yeah, but Curt, the question is not whether, the residents of Kentucky would vote for an initiative that they could do so. The question is whether Mitch will let it get to the floor for a vote.
That's really federal legalization.
Right.
All right, so let me turn it over to you guys. What would have to happen? Because I think Mitch sees this more as, I don't want to do anything nice for the Democrats and help them. So what would have to be in Mitch's pocket, no pun intended, for him to allow this to go through?
It's hard for me to say, Curt, because I'm really not convinced of what it is in Mitch's mind that's holding this up. He's not just holding this up. He's holding up
everything
whole lot of legislation. He calls himself the Grim Reaper because, and traditionally the Senate has been the place where everything slows down and is deliberated and considered. And the passions run high in the White House. They run high in the House of Representatives. They call the Senate is the saucer where you cool the tea, and he takes that seriously. Is it just a matter of that? Or does he have some bug up his ass regarding cannabis in particular? I don't know one way or the other whether he does or he doesn't. If it is the latter, then I don't see this getting past Mitch anytime soon. If it's just simply a matter of Senate slowing things down and deliberating, it has a chance.
I don't think the Senate would have enough votes if Biden signed on, right? They'd have to veto it. I mean, if he signed on, you'd have to have a Senate. What is it, a supermajority? So maybe Biden gets on from his own party's House push, signs it, and dares the Republicans. I don't think they even have a supermajority to stop it. And maybe that's a message to
well, it's got to get to the president first, and it can't get to the president until it gets past the Senate.
All right.
So They can deliberate all they want to in the House, and they can pass anything they want to in the House, but it doesn't get put up for a signature, either to veto or not. It doesn't go to his desk, period, unless there is a floor vote on the Senate and it passes. So he could be the roadblock here. Now, there are other indications that say that the Senate is not as anti-cannabis as one might expect. For example, there was a bunch of rules issued from the USDA, the Department of Agriculture. And the Senate Appropriations Committee issued a report that was critical of those rules regarding marijuana and hemp. For example, there was a rule that forces hemp growers to destroy their entire crop if they are tested and exceed, 0.5% THC. 0.3% is technically the threshold between hemp and marijuana. But if it's above 0.5%, they have to destroy their whole crop. Well, the Senate Appropriations Committee called that threshold arbitrary and urged the USDA to reconsider it. There are other provisions that are just creating unnecessary roadblocks for farmers to get their hemp to market and legal cannabis to market that the Senate Appropriations Committee took issue with. So what does that tell us about their predilection as far as or their position regarding hemp and marijuana? I don't know. I don't know exactly what to read into that, but it makes me wonder if the roadblock isn't necessarily, or the logjam isn't necessarily as tough in the Senate as it's made out to be. I guess time will tell.
I think, if you take we were talking about Steve D'Angelo earlier, he's always said, the president can call and order the DEA to remove it from the Controlled Substance Act. Now,
anytime he wants to.
Right. So, we don't have Bernie Sanders in there, so I wouldn't anticipate that day one. But what if Biden, they want to go around it? What if the Harris and the Democrats are just putting enough pressure where they say, look, we'll do it one way or the other. If McConnell wants to do this, make the call, Joe, and let's see what he does. I mean, there's ways around it, but now we go back to, Joe Biden's history says he's not really a big fan and he's always been against it. But I'm telling you, money talks, and politicians need the money and they need the votes. And, maybe with Mitch being from Kentucky is a blessing in disguise. He might be playing with fire. Yes, he just got reelected. He's very powerful, but he's also got a lot of farmers down there that would like to make money as well and cross a state line and do some business.
Yeah.
Not to mention the business folks in the industry, knowing that how much tax revenue that would pull into the state. I mean, he could be getting a lot of pressure from all angles. And the stigma is going away because so many states have legalized now. I mean, we're talking about states like Mississippi and, South Dakota and places where you just really wouldn't have expected it a few years ago. So maybe that helps ease.
I think the latest numbers from New Frontier were like 71% of Americans have access to some form of legal through a card. In the worst case, 30% have access to recreational as far as population wise. So at some point, what are we up to? 38 states? There's only 12 that don't have it. I mean, at some point we're it's the opposite. What are we doing with these 12 states? So
right. Yeah. Idaho and where, Kansas and few left that are holdouts. And the funny thing, and one of the things you look at with some of those states is they're getting in a position where they're surrounded by legal states because so many states are legal now. So how do you police that?
I mean, that's huge pressure.
So they're watching their neighbors just put money in the bank. Well,
that happened with New York. That's why in Massachusetts, if you look, all the people are over here on the ocean, and all the not all of them, but a lot of dispensaries are over here on the New York border where there's no people. There's a reason for that. Yeah. And of course, New Jersey is going to force New York. Look at Cuomo, right? He's going to we got to get this done tomorrow because we're not letting all that money go to New Jersey. And now Pennsylvania's got it. So guess what? New York's not going to sit there who needs tax revenue. There's a lot of pressure. That happened with Colorado. Remember that when they went and all these states filed lawsuits and the judge threw them out and then they had to legalize.
And like you said, in some of these states, you see all the dispensaries on the borders,
You just have to go over the state line.
Right.
So what is the holdup in New York? Why hasn't this passed up until now?
I think it's because, Cuomo had put it on the table and then kind of they yanked it back. And obviously election and I think voter, how he's feeling the temperature. But I think New Jersey's the kicker. New Jersey and Pennsylvania. There's no way New Yorkers are going to let the New Jerseyans, get all that money tax revenue. Like that's never going to happen. Never going to happen in New York.
And New York is hurting more than most states as far as revenue because people are leaving in droves. and people with lots of money are leaving. So they got to make up that shortfall some kind of way.
Well, they see Biden's tax plan, they're really going to leave. So, New York's going to do this fast, as well as the California tax, as 50 Cent pointed out.
That's right.
Because I saw
he
the
doesn't want
tax
to be
rate,
25 cent, right? Hey,
he doesn't want to be 25 cent.
I got a question for you, Curt. What's your stance on the word marijuana? I noticed on your website, it's rare to see that word used. And we've had this discussion. We asked Steve D'Angelo about it when he was on.
Well, and I asked Jimmy about it. He didn't like it.
Yeah. And we, we're older guys. We're in our 60s. So we grew up in a different generation than you, I would say. And that's what we called it, marijuana. And so I find myself using the word all the time on the show. But I noticed on your website it's rare. So how do you feel about it?
I'm a little partial to that word cannabis. I'd love to see the world turn to that cannabis.
I try to use it. Phil does. We try to use cannabis whenever we can. But I mean, even when you read articles, right, Phil? Right. They use the word marijuana all the time.
All the time. Well, because it's just kind of an established name. But there's a long history to that name, and there are racial overtones to that name that I don't particularly like. And plus, whenever I think of the word marijuana, I think of, Jeff Sessions, marijuana, good people don't smoke marijuana.
Yeah.
So we have a couple articles up about that and the history of it. And when we put them up, the response from our Facebook page, when we even put is marijuana a racist term? Pretty good question. Here's read the history. Yeah. Oh my gosh. You guys did. I'm going to unfollow you. I can't believe it even. This is so crap. And my feeling, to get to your question, is it is not a racist term in origin. It was made a racist term by the U.S. government in the 1940s and leading into the 50s. They used that word and, made it a dirty word the way they used it. So the origin itself, not racist. The development in society and as humans and what the U.S. government propaganda did to it, it is considered a racist term.
Fair enough. That makes more sense. Yeah, I can see that. Because, Mexican Americans, Tejanos back, 100 years ago, they were calling it marijuana.
Yep.
But that's...
So I guess the bottom line is you do avoid the word.
I try to. I think cannabis is the correct scientific name. And I think if we're going to go down the stigma road and what people think, and, I think starting fresh, I wish they called it medical cannabis from 10 years ago when they first started this stuff.
Right.
I just think it's the right word. It's a good new beginning for people who are trying it, as opposed to the stigma of weed and dope and marijuana.
Yeah, it's Cheech and Chong and Spicoli, and that's what comes to mind. You had a great article on the insurance issue. Tell us about that.
On which was it?
Insurance.
For cannabis?
Mm-hmm.
We actually have one coming out tomorrow, so you must have the sneak preview.
Yep, he's got the advance copy.
Yeah, so luckily I just went over this with Jimmy, and I guess Lloyd's of London, breaking news, is going to start insuring the crops. As I said, it's too bad they're 6 months too late for one fire season or global warming. Right, but at least going forward now, there'll be a legitimate underwriter for whether it's cannabis crops or cannabis, manufacturing. And that's just, part of that consolidation that we've seen is that the world is getting ready. The tornado has started and the legalization is coming. And I hope it doesn't leave the U.S. behind, because you have Mexico legalizing in the next 2 weeks. The advocates are not thrilled with the plan, but it's still legalization. So now you have Canada and Mexico. You're having a major British insurer stepping in to start doing cannabis crops. Wow. Hey, Mitch. The world's moving without you, buddy.
Right. Well, that's hey, Mitch, here's the wall. Read the writing.
Now that's the breaking news. But I was talking about the health insurance article you had.
Oh yeah, so this was a great one from I think it was a health insurance quote website came out with a piece, and it caught my eye because I hadn't read anything ever about this. And it was the fact that 50% of the states that have medical cannabis. Sorry about that, guys. They have 50% less health insurance shoppers and applicants. And when you kind of you think about that for a second, you're like, well, that's got to be an anomaly, right? States have a lot of people, and then some states have, South Dakota doesn't have as many. But when you think about the implications on a national level, that people, if we're going to, extrapolate that out, who use cannabis in a recreational or medical way, whether it's for anxiety, sleep, appetite, stuff like that, they're saying, you know what? I'm doing all right. I don't need that. Take away the politics of it. You have to have health insurance and the fines and all that. But like, they don't look for health insurance at a rate of 50% less.
That's huge.
That's ridiculous.
That's mind-boggling to the national scale of what we spend on health insurance and Medicaid, especially with seniors. They're our biggest buyers of cannabis. So if you could get the seniors, I mean, I'm not saying they can drop health insurance, but you could just see the implications that people who use cannabis, let's just say, need health insurance, they think 50% less.
That's
right. Stop the payment. Stop the press.
And yeah, it's whether it's reality or perception. There are people who are, living better through cannabis. And
especially the people that are just going to the CVS once a month, right, to get their, whether it's hypertension or their sleep, and I only use Alestra, like a little bit. Like those guys are just using cannabis and they're gone. It's not, if you have heart condition or serious things going on, cannabis isn't going to cure you. But if you're on those, like, I just have 1 or 2 prescriptions when I need it, those guys are all using cannabis and getting off health systems. So that's unbelievable.
Yeah. I remember before the pandemic started, I would go and Jay, you had the same experience going to the, or I guess it was Andrew going into the dispensaries, sitting in the waiting room. They're all people our age.
Yeah.
They're,
shocking.
I don't call myself elderly, but
you guys got all the money. You can actually buy it. So
we can afford it. Yeah. So tell us, how did you and Jimmy hook up with Pro Cannabis Media? What's the story behind that?
I think we met at one of the Boston NCAN shows, New England Cannabis shows, and he was interviewing, I think it was Barney Frank, and I think he had Bob Lobel, who's a sportscaster. And I was doing the website. I wasn't doing much on the video side as far as being on camera. We were making kind of short videos that go with every article, more for search engine placement and kind of being in YouTube. And then we just kind of started talking about what I recognized him growing up. He was a sportscaster in Boston. So I do remember him, and he wanted to transition to this. And I already had a website with some traffic, and we just said we should do like a show where we just kind of toss it back and forth like you guys do. And, now it's grown up to a big thing where it's got a Twitch channel. It's going Roku. I think he's going to do pretty close to 24-hour, footage and coverage. And he's just really seeing an opportunity in that market for education. And, from a perspective that is of a little bit of an older generation. It's not tie-dye T-shirts and bongs and all sorts of displays in front of you of the sponsors. So having educated talks with doctors and politicians and dispensary owners about the business.
I tell you, We Talk News is great, and Pro Cannabis Media is an excellent network. Everybody should really go check it out. So much content, so much information, great interviews. I mean, you guys have had everybody on there. Steve D'Angelo, and who are some of the folks you all have interviewed or Jimmy's interviewed on? Yeah,
so one of the bigger ones we did was the CEO roundtable right when COVID hit. Yeah. It was Bruce Linton, Canopy. It was Joe Lasardi at that point. He was right up the street from me. Chris Walsh of MJ Biz. We were all kind of sitting around, and we just got like a 4-way Zoom going and threw out what's going to happen with COVID and stuff like that.
That's a great show.
So much information. Tommy Chong on, and I'm just trying to think. He's had all sorts of people as far as regional kind of celebrities as well. Yeah.
I think Jimmy's Tommy on our show. You think we need Tommy on our show?
Yeah, we do.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's got to do dispensaries coming out, Cheech and Chong dispensaries, and
he's
happy to go on shows.
All right. We'll have to do that. Well, Jimmy's been on here a couple of times, and he's crazy, man. He's got some stories that are just really, really fun. You guys do an awesome job over there.
Well, one of our superstars is right here. So,
with the exception of Phil.
Don't say Phil's not part of it. He's been a regular.
That's right. Yeah, every week.
And of course, Deb Borchardt came aboard right away.
She's
I've known
great.
her for a while. She does an unbelievable Wall Street report.
She awesome sure does.
Report.
And you kind of do get that. We try to keep it at 15 minutes, but sometimes it's 20, but you just want to zip through it as opposed to kind of like, 90 minutes. I have to filter, like, just like boom. And Jimmy really does. Like, we're going to do 18 topics. Go. So.
Yeah, we try to do 30, and it's hard. We always go over a little bit, but we're about there now, aren't we, Phil?
We're about there now. I just want to remind everybody that if you like the show, and especially if you like the video, first of all, go into Apple Podcasts if you like the audio and give us a 5-star rating. Tell a friend about us. Curt, how can they get in touch with you folks over on cannabis.net?
They can just come to cannabis.net. They can fill out the contact us form. I think it's info@cannabis.net's the email at the bottom of the page. If you have any story ideas or you want to get branding, we have a decent amount of eyeballs. And, we work with Pro Cannabis Media too. So there's always opportunity to get on camera and have your brand featured in like a, more of a video sense and do your own pre-rolls. So as this world, needs more cannabis coverage and some of the bigger places still won't take it, it's an opportunity, whether you're into CBD or hemp, or you just want to get your company's story out there. You're fundraising. We get that all the time. And we try to help everybody else. It's pretty reasonable and we're all in this together, certainly. And it's a great group of people in this industry. Probably until the sharks come in with full legalization. So it's a real, like you said, Steve D'Angelo, Tommy, really great guys, as humble as can be. You could just call them up. So.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, what I'm looking forward to is, with any luck, and we have some good news on the vaccine front, that this whole COVID thing may dissipate sometime over the next year. I'm looking forward to the cannabis events, trade shows and in person, face to face, press in the flesh. There's so many people out there that we've talked to that I just want to meet and sit down and chat with. And
you're one of them, Curt.
I'm just looking. Yes, right. You and Mr. Jimmy Young. He was great. We get him on there. We just kind of like wind him up and let him go.
Yeah,
he tells these stories. Nothing to do with cannabis.
I do miss it too. And the MJ Big Show in Vegas was the Super Bowl. We got to set up a booth and get a media booth where we just do this all day.
Absolutely. Count us in, man.
How cool would that be to just stream for 4 or 5 hours a day?
Right. Do a live podcast from our booth.
It's like Media Row for the Super Bowl. It'll be the Weed Bowl.
Right. So how else can they get in touch with us, Jay?
You can send us an email at podcast@VoteProPot.com. Call our message line, 240-257-2441. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon, and you'll be updated
never miss
every
an
time
episode.
we never miss one.
Well, you guys are the Washington insiders. So what I've given you my opinion right now. $100 on the table. What do we see with cannabis legalization? Go,
Phil.
Well,
he called it for 2019. So I
thought it was going to be 2019. I would not be surprised if someone in the Biden administration, maybe Joe himself, gets on the blower to the FDA and says, take it off Schedule 1. Now he has talked about rescheduling instead of descheduling, but I think there's going to be enormous pressure on him to do more. The folks at Normal and some of the other cannabis policy project or marijuana policy project rather, they're saying that rescheduling is not sufficient, and I think I don't think Kamala Harris is all that thrilled about rescheduling. I think there's going to be ample pressure to take it off Schedule 1 and just lose that whole. And once that happens, that's it. The game's over. I think there's nothing much more for the federal criminalization beyond taking it off Schedule 1. So that's my hope and semi prediction.
I think 2021 is the year. I really do. I feel like this is it. There's just everything's coming in line, and especially the economics of the situation with all these local jurisdictions being out of money. And politicians are always looking for a way to fill the coffers. What easier way is there than this? So I think this could be it.
If they won't see the light, make them feel the heat. I say that all the time. Too bad, if they're not going to do the right thing, at least do the smart thing.
And it's going to, you mentioned it. There's I've been harping on this for a while, for a year or two, that when you remove that from the Controlled Substance Act, no longer a controlled substance, that removes the post office, federal office. It's now grandma's cookies. It's beef jerky.
Banking.
Right. And the Safe Banking Act.
Yeah, Safe Banking Act means you can actually put all that money in a bank and track it and hopefully get the IRS code fixed as well.
Take credit cards.
Yeah, but you're looking at, now it's going to come down to like crossing a state line on a non-controlled substance. Oof. The DEA won't be involved. The only way the FDA gets involved is you mix it with a food or a protein source.
Or
you talk about a free for all like we will never see. You take away those the what could happen federally as a punishment. It is going to get wild because it's going to be off to the races.
It's a finger out of the dike if you take it off Schedule 1.
Oh, totally. And business-wise, everyone's going to push the limit. I'll guarantee that right off the bat. You think the black and gray market's aggressive now?
Yeah.
I mean, what is it? California, your fine for a first offense without a license, $10, civil fine. You know what the second offense is getting caught? $10. So you're wondering why guys are like on weed maps, just running a van for $50,000 a month and taking a chance. There you go.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, you pay more of that in taxes on it.
I know, California. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, Curt. Really enjoyed it. Let's do it again, man. Let's make this a regular thing. What are you doing tomorrow night?
Yeah, I was going to say, once we get some movement on this, we might have to have a redo in December if this thing actually something happens with this vote in December that we don't see coming.
Yeah, will you come back?
Absolutely. You know where to find me.
Okay, great.
Right now.
All right. Curt Dalton, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being a part of Vote Pro Podcast. You know, we put a lot of stuff on the podcast, but we can't really cover everything. So we invite you to check us out on our social media platforms. Go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn and do a search for Vote Pro Pot.